Thank you very much. And morning, everyone, or whatever time zone you happen to be in. I know we've got some folks from overseas as well, so it's terrific to welcome everyone to this interesting kind of coffee with Chris. For those who don't know the genesis of the idea, I made a pledge early on to the first year class that I would have coffee with every single undergraduate in the program, and I've now extended that to all of our staff and our faculty. And I actually just had a coffee with virtual coffee with some of our newest faculty members. So it's been terrific. So as Sonia mentioned, and I hope everyone can hear me, as Sonia mentioned, the goal today is really to give you a bit of an update as to how the faculty has responded to what's really been, frankly, a huge and a fun in some level engineering challenge. As I've said many times, we love multifactorial problems, and we love dealing with resiliency, and we love dealing with uncertainties and stuff like that in all sorts of different ways. And frankly, I've been absolutely impressed and proud of how the faculty, the staff, the students, everybody has responded to what was really kind of quite an interesting pivot that we had to do in 48 hours. In 48 hours, the university pivoted over 4,500 courses from in-person to online. Engineering did that pivot from a Friday afternoon immediately over the weekend right to a Monday morning, transitioning everything to online/remote delivery of courses. It was astounding, and I am just, as I said before, so proud of the faculty, the staff, and in fact everybody, and students included, for their ability to manage that transition so well. It was smooth. There were a few bumps, as you might expect, but it worked out really well. We lucked out because it's towards the end of the term, last 3 weeks, so a lot of just kind of largely wrapping up stuff, but we pivoted well. Deliveries went well. The technology survived. We didn't have too many internet outages. A few muted microphones here and there. And then into final assessments, we shut down our online or sort of in-person labs, but all of our research activity continues right now. And everything has rolled out well. I'll give you some updates on some of the things that we've done. First off, obviously, all the courses and all the assessments, we pivoted. We very quickly came up with a policy to allow students a significant amount of flexibility around the grading scheme for the term. In fact, we went to a model where all courses, the students could take a percentage grade, they could take credit, they could take no credit, but only after they actually got their final grades back. And this was a faculty-wide policy to deal with kind of the management of this. It worked out well. Students appreciated the fact we were providing this flexibility because this was quite a dramatic change for students. Students some moved home, some moved out of residence. It was quite a challenge. We pivoted quickly to determine new strategies for final assessments, realizing that what would normally be your standard 2.5-hour exam in the exam center with your aid sheets and all that sort of stuff just was not going to happen. And so we very quickly moved to alternative methods of assessment. We asked the students to provide us with input, and instructors worked quite collaboratively with the students to come up with strategies that, for the most part, worked out well. We were able to deliver final assessments in varying approaches. And I was actually just talking to Professor Eric Diller in mechanical just about half an hour ago, and he said it worked out well for him in the way he was able to deliver his final assessments for his course in mechanical. So I think on a whole, it worked out well. We're seeing how grading's coming through right now. That's worked out well. On the research front, research activity, largely any on-campus research activity, effectively was put on hiatus, and this was really to keep people at home, minimize on-campus presence. Researchers who were able to pivot to do COVID-related research quickly pivoted into that mode, and have been quite active. And I'll give you a little bit of update on some of those areas of where the faculty has made significant contributions in that space. Some other things we did well, and I think we did quite proactively. As you might imagine, PEY, both students who are out on PEY, students who are about to go on PEY, huge challenges as companies and as regions started to close down operations, and various countries, various cities started to go into varying stages of lockdown. We quickly repatriated all of our PEY students that were in companies that were now sort of suspending operations. Interesting enough, a lot of students were actually able to keep their PEY operations going. Now we're just working from home, which was kind of cool. I actually had a great chat with one of our PEY students who was working for the TTC. They said, we don't need you to come in now, but we'll keep on the project so you can keep working from home on this remote project. So that was terrific. So our PEY office has been working. There's internships still available. Obviously, they've changed the numbers and sort of opportunities, but all that activity still remains in place right now. The university also did repatriate students who were abroad on exchanges and research opportunities abroad. So we brought people in and tried to settle things as best we could. The other thing, which was a bit of a challenge, and this is one that again reflects some of the interesting things that we normally plan for the end of the term and the end of the year, and all this sort of inputs and great stuff that we normally do, things like convocation. It was a tough decision for the university to say, well, we're going to still have a convocation, but we can't bring everybody on campus. And the decision was made quite thoughtfully that we won't have a physical convocation this year. The president and the chancellor will still come in and grant everybody's degrees in absentia. That's actually mandated by the U of T Act. They have to do a physical event. But the challenge and the reason the university didn't want to hold a physical ceremony was just the logistics and just the challenges of trying to bring that many people onto campus at that time, and with the travel restrictions and not knowing where the people come in, travel, it just didn't make a lot of sense. So the minute that sort of discussion started, we very rapidly said, what, for engineering, it's so important that we have an in-person event, that we will, and we've pledged this to our classes, that we will hold a true physical ceremony at some point when we're allowed to gather in a of 500,000 people again, and do that. We're excited to do this. I know it's such an important thing to do, and so we'll be doing that. We will be sending certificates. We'll be going out to all of our graduates this year. They receive the physical diplomas around the same day they would have normally got them in June. But we have a kind of a nice social media campaign built around that. So we're going to be asking the students to kind of show where they are when they got their diploma, and then we're going to try and do that kind of fun. So it's going to be an interesting thing to showcase. So lots of stuff has been on the go. Let me give you a bit of an update on some of the cool stuff. The minute this happened, engineering really quickly came to the forefront and said, we've got strategies, we've got ideas on what we can do. So I'll give you a sense of some of the things that were very quickly implemented. As many groups know, as engineering has lots of tools and fabrication facilities around, so our facilities are in use now to help as part of an institutional effort around creating and prototyping out PPE. That's personal protective equipment, whether it's face shields and things like that. So we're repurposing some of that. Our mechanical engineering shop is working on a low-cost ventilator design as part of the ventilator challenge, and this is work that Cameron Bedahine has been doing there. And that's cool. That's kind of on the faculty, but it was interesting. Almost immediately, students came up with some really terrific solutions, and one of the first ones was actually launched by our undergraduates in engineering science. They came up with flatten.ca, which is a way of people self-reporting symptoms so that they could get a sense of where things were before people had to go to the hospital and get tested. So if you go to flatten.ca, you'll actually see how this this app and this website is being used now across the country to sort of track the progress of this this pandemic. So that's an exciting development actually that was rolled out quite quickly by our students in partnership and with support from Google and other resources as well. Other students have launched Feed the Frontlines TO, which is a way of providing hot meals for workers on the front lines. This came out from Ananya Tandon Verma, who's an Indy 1T4PY, and Simak Savari, who's a master's student in EC. And they came together to come up with a strategy for doing that, and that's terrific. The other one, for those who are home sewers, Stitch for Corona was launched actually by a couple of grad students, Kramri Patel and Chaim Katz, both in IBV. The idea of sort of sewing fabric face masks to help protect folks during this particular situation. So lots of different things have been done, have been launched. You're seeing a slide right now, some of the things that have come out of Industrial Engineering. Tim Chan's group has launched redeploy.ca, which is a way of looking at how to redeploy healthcare resources in different sectors. So it's been a terrific opportunity to see how engineering students have actually made significant contributions, or engineering as a faculty have made significant contributions in this situation. So it remains a very I'll say a very fluid situation right now at the university, in particular for engineering. We were able to end the term off well because it was only 3 weeks. We've now pivoted into planning for the summer, what we're going to do for our summer opportunities, looking towards our admissions, and now we're starting to plan for the fall in a much more, I guess, a much more organized fashion about how we would launch our fall semester, fall terms, and importantly, how do we start our research operations within engineering right now. It's been 6-7 weeks now of this, and we would like to try and restart this. A lot of what's going to happen in terms of the restart at all levels, as we're seeing across the country right now, as we're seeing around the world, very dependent on what the government, local governments, in the case of the province here, say about gatherings of certain sizes, and it's all going to be based on recommendations coming down from public health. So we're planning, we've got all these scenarios laid out, and we're waiting to hear as to when we can start and at what scale. That I think is going to be the biggest challenge for us this fall, is our ability to deliver what we know is an outstanding program, and ensuring that this experience, whether it's an online remote, whether it's in person, always maintains that community feel that we have for engineering, and something that you've all gone through in the past. And we want to make sure that that same sense of community is built as we launch up through the fall. So exciting times, challenging times. Again, I've been just absolutely amazed by the resilience, the enthusiasm, the excitement of our faculty, of our students, of our alums. There's lots of ways to recognize that the efforts that are underway right now. So I'm going to, maybe it's a good time now, I think, to pivot and take a look at some of the questions that we're getting here. There were some that came in early and some that are kind of popping up on the chat. So I'm going to kind of take them in various sequences here, if I can kind of follow it here. Some of the challenges we were facing. What are we doing to support mental health during this time? I think that's a super important thing. And actually, maybe I'll cast that as a broader thing. The faculty has been very focused on mental health and wellness of the students, of our staff, and of our faculty for a long time now. And we actually just announced earlier this week The first, our mental health advisor has been appointed inside engineering, dedicated individual, Melissa Fernandez, who is our learning strategist and now appointed in this role as a mental health advisor. And so we've started that process. That person's online right now and is available. All of the universities and all the engineering wellness, all of our student advisors, all of that, all of those student services have always been available and remain available as our frontline contacts with the students in general. So those are all still there. People can still book appointments. They can still contact them, obviously, in kind of a virtual, non-in-person sense right now. But those are all still there. We've been doing a lot of open forum meetings. We've been running Zoom meetings. I'm fully available to talk to students to try and reassure students about the transition. As I said before, students, were anxious about the transition. They were anxious about the final exams, and we tried to come up with policies and strategies, which I think, for the most part, actually did a good job in ensuring stability as best we could going forward. One thing was interesting that students were actually kind of interested in were like, how does this whole pandemic thing affect accreditation, and what about my program, and that sort of stuff. And I'll have this a big shout out to all the engineering deans across the country and to the accreditation board. They immediately that, you know what, this is something that's affecting everybody, and we will accommodate whatever you're going to do to ensure that the delivery of your programs, the in-person hours, the lab experiences, all that sort of stuff, we will accommodate whatever you have to do in order to deliver that, even if it has to be in a remote fashion. This will not affect your accreditation. In fact, they've now said everybody automatically gets another year to kind of go through this process. So all of those issues, I think, which are upper mind on a lot of students, very quickly regulatory agencies said, this is not, we're not going to hold you to any of this sort of stuff. It's important that you deliver the material, and we're not going to be, that strict on stuff. I will say there was one organization that was not that flexible, and that would actually be the Kipling Society for the Iron Ring. So, as you may know, U of T were Camp 1, and so all of our students got their iron rings before this all happened. And it was interesting to hear from other engineering deans at other camps across the country, because the shutdown started happening, some of them were not able to hold their iron ring ceremonies. The society, the Kipling Society, actually, you're not allowed to virtually give the iron rings to your students. They have to hold a physical ceremony in order to get them. So there are actually programs across the country right now where you've got students who are now in fourth year, about to graduate, and they don't physically have their rings, which is unfortunate. But we were able to get our ceremony through, so that was actually pretty nice. Yeah, so Jim just posted, Waterloo and Western have yet to receive their iron rings, and they won't be able to unless they get everybody in person. So lots of opportunities for our alumni to participate and engage. I think we're going to be looking to our alums in our normal way to connect with our students around mentoring. I think hearing from you as to how things are pivoting within your own workspaces, within your local context, will help reassure our students. And this is part of a challenge that the world is facing right now, and this is part of an opportunity for us to learn how to adapt, be creative, be innovative, and deal with these adversities in a sense. We have, these are challenges going forward. This is, for students coming in this coming year, this is, one potential semester out of 8 that may be a little bit perturbed. And I think you all may recognize it in your own past experience as alumni. There were years or there were terms where there were untoward things that happened at the university. A lab was shut, or something happened. How did you respond to that, to sort of give students a sense of these sorts of ways in which we sort of teach people and train people to be resilient and to kind of adapt to the situation. Sarah pointed out there's going to be a new alumni campaign called If I Knew Then, which will ask to give alumni the gift of advice and praise to the graduate class, and this is going to show up on Connect. So I encourage everyone to sign on to that and stay tuned for some of the opportunities that are going to show up there. And there's also within engineering right now, there's a COVID-19 engineering fund, engineering specific fund to help support initiatives within engineering. One of those initiatives, actually, and we've been very grateful to receive support, is to entrance scholarships for students in this coming term, coming year, because we know that financial aid is going to be a particular challenge given the current economic climate. We've seen how the Canadian government has responded with $9 billion of student support around summer support and work support for students who've now lost their jobs or lost their internships to help with that with the funding over the summer term. So the financial space is one in particular, which we know is going to be a challenge on so many different levels. Actually, I will just throw a shout out to that race. I wasn't going to bring the Sanford Fleming Fire, but yes, that was an event that caused a conflict within engineering years ago. And you know, those are events where it's easy to plan for recovery because you have a tangible timeline. You're fixing something and you can see it being fixed and you know you're going to go back. In this context, the challenge we have is we don't actually know when we can kind of return to normal and what actually that normal will look like. This is, again, something which we're all going to have to learn how to adapt to going forward. Lots of challenges. You can all well imagine what those challenges are going to be facing students in particular. But rest assured that we're working quite hard to figure out how we're going to do some of these activities, in particular things like labs. For those who are in civil, you know, many of you know that we're in the middle of starting the rebuild for the Gull Lake bunkhouse. Put on pause when the Ontario government put a shutdown on essential construction, but now that they've relaxed that, it's back up and starting. The work is going to start again. But because of the uncertainty in terms of gatherings, the survey camp for this year is actually being postponed, and we're going to do a double cohort for I think next summer to make sure that the students still get the survey camp experience. It's just unfortunately not being able to do it this year. So. Let's see. Let's take a look at a couple of questions. So here's a good question, and yeah, this is an interesting one. We had to pivot to alternative methods of assessment for the students, and that was really because we weren't able to obviously meet in person to hold a traditional exam, and so. Yeah, it's a good question that came from Julia here is what are we going to do? Is this going to become kind of the new normal or a new approach for looking at assessment processes? And actually, that's a really great question because we all know that everyone learns uniquely. Everyone obviously then tests somewhat uniquely and is a standard 2.5 hour sit down, panic, lay your pencils out type exam the best way of doing evaluations. And I think this is actually a good opportunity for us to look at alternative ways of doing assessments. We know that one of the major stressor for students obviously is final exams and midterms, and trying to come up with better ways to do assessments in a more nuanced and a more balanced fashion is something that I think is certainly worth considering. And so, yeah, I think we will be looking at different strategies going forward. We've seen faculty pivot. We've seen faculty come up with new strategies for doing assessments. I think when you start to look at some of these remote assessments, and some people have flagged this question, we start to, and this is unfortunate, you start to raise questions of academic integrity when you're looking at online assessment strategies. And so that is something that we are also concerned about, as many institutions are as well. how do you do assessments? Do you come with alternative strategies for assessments, different methods which are more amenable to ensuring integrity when you're doing them in a remote fashion? What works traditionally in trying to pivot what is a traditional approach to an online approach, it really doesn't work. You end up having to actually customize it for the online strategy. So that's something that we're looking at right now. Exciting. Let's see, other questions that are popping up here. Outreach is continue to develop programs for our summer students, for children. This is an exciting opportunity. I think the other thing we've done, unfortunately, the university has asked that we close our camps for the summer. That's a huge challenge, I think, for any of us, myself included, who have young children who are eagerly looking forward to summer camps. I will say that what we have done within engineering now is we've actually just launched the UT Engineering Academy, which is actually going to provide our incoming students with prep in physics and math, and we're actually thinking about chemistry as well, to help them prepare for the transition into first year, into the fall. We think this is actually be quite an innovative program, and so we're excited for what that's actually going to look like as they roll it out over the summer, to help our first students as they go into that transition. That'll be it's a brand new thing that Outreach just launched, so it's pretty exciting. So Hollis asked, what measures have been undertaken to detect academic dishonesty in the new digital distance e-learning delivery model? What plans, if any, are currently to continue any parts of distance learning for future courses? So, great question. So from the academic integrity perspective, there are lots of tools that we use in general for detection of integrity. Obviously, when you see similar answers, that suggests that there is some sort of collusion. The other is that there are lots of online sites that, for whatever reason, students decide that to post the question in order to solicit an answer, and when we see that and we that those sites are asked to are flagged, it's an integrity issue for those providers. They've pledged to pull those things down, and then we track backwards. So those are, it's an offense against the student conduct code, and that includes both the person who provides it as well as anyone who downloads it. So that is unfortunate. But those are situations which do arise. We've asked the students to sign an honor code when it comes to doing these kind of assessments, but for whatever reason, it doesn't always work. There are a number of different opportunities around AIs and e-proctoring and in-person proctoring and things like that as well. And those are all opportunities that are the university institutions looking at, but then frankly, every institution is looking at that right now, and these providers are overloaded in their ability to do. There are also a lot of concerns around e-proctoring because it requires that individual have access to their computers, and there are challenges around privacy issues there as well. But there are, I think, let me spin it around, that the issue of academic integrity is something which we think is very small with engineering. We hope it stays small, even if you do pivot to an online system or remote learning. So we hope that and we certainly feel that the majority of our students are, in fact, not tempted by those opportunities. In the context of distance and remote learning and e-learning, I think what we're seeing right now is actually this is a terrific way for us to supplement and to complement what we will return to eventually, which is our traditional in-person lectures, because we're seeing that there are tremendous advantages to delivering content in sort of an asynchronous way, so we can kind of revisit it, As people are seeing now, it's a great way to kind of collaborate and spin up spontaneous discussion sessions. And so we're actually seeing that faculty are recognizing that there is huge potential in what they can do in a remote e-learning type manner that would augment what they normally deliver in terms of their classroom experience. By no means are we interested in trying to replace our in-person experiences with a pure virtual experience. That is not, in my mind, that is not a good strategy. Engineering is all about being in the lab, doing something physical, being with your colleagues in a teams fashion, doing that kind of tactile engagement with material, whether you're a civ, whether you're mechanical, whether you're a chemical, whether you're an electrical. And we would never remove those elements. We see this remote learning as just a great way to supplement, provide new ways of delivering content, but it wouldn't replace an in-person lecture by any ways, unless it's absolutely necessary, as we're kind of forced into that right now. So a huge challenge. Let's see, a couple other things. Julie actually asked, and that's another good question. Is there any cyber research or work being done in the faculty as more folks work remotely? Yeah, cybersecurity is actually a huge element within electrical engineering right now. Deepa Kundar, who's the current chair of electrical, runs a cybersecurity program. Glenn Gulak, a professor in electrical engineering, does quantum encryption. So all the communication folks are focused in the sort of cyberspace security aspect. So tremendous amount of work going on in that space right now. We've seen, as everyone has, what's happened now is people have rapidly pivoted to all these video platforms like Zoom and so on. We saw how quickly those companies realized that they were vulnerable to Zoom bombing and so on, and how quickly those companies actually pivoted to bring in appropriate protections and so on for their system. So yeah, there's certainly a significant amount of research going on right now in that particular space. So lots of stuff going there in particular. So good question here about yeah, actually an interesting question about how what's happening right now with the pandemic has, I think, brought to the forefront a lot of what how human activity has played a role in various things, and we're seeing this from cleaner air over different parts of the world as factories are shut down. We're seeing the ability now for people to remain functional doing work, even though they don't physically have to go to work. So we're seeing the rise of the remote working from home type approach and how efficient it can be, and also things that don't work well from a home context. So I think we're identifying areas where we can start to make significant changes. To your question, Hao-Fu, what we are interested in, I think this is something which is very interesting for us to look at, is that we were about to spin up, or we are still about to spin up, an initiative around resilient infrastructure. And this is about, initially led by Brian Carney, on the idea of how engineering broadly helps cities recover from disasters. And this is in the context of war or hurricanes and that sort of stuff. Like, how do you rebuild a city, rebuild all that infrastructure? Not the acute effect, right, but the long-term redevelopment. But I think we're also starting to see right now with this pandemic how engineering can start to play a huge role in the restart of a global economy. How does manufacturing restart? How do supply chains get changed? The role of financial engineering. How do new building designs? There's a lot of infrastructure. Civil engineering is playing a huge role right now around air quality as it relates to virus transmission. Material science is playing a huge role in terms of materials and surfaces for preventing infection. And we're seeing all the effect now around transportation as well. So resiliency in the broadest context, engineering's participation is something that's going to be important going forward. One which I think we can position our faculty, capital F, and our students exactly in that space. And there's a lot that is going on. I'm continually impressed by seeing what our faculty members in what one might consider to be non-traditional areas and their ability to impact this are coming up. Jeff Siegel's doing some outstanding work in civil around looking at HVAC systems and how you prevent airborne virus transmission within an HVAC system. We're working closely with public health around respirator design, for instance. We're working with medicine around point of care devices and diagnostics. Our unit ops labs are looking at how do you do scale up and how do you reposition around sanitizer scale up, even bioproduction is going to be a huge area for vaccine development. Companies like Sanofi and all these other companies which are going to be doing that, that's a lot of chemical engineering that's going to be involved in doing that kind of process. So huge opportunities going forward. And I think, Vincent, you just said a terrific point right there, which was that this is a unique opportunity for us to see what we can do as a global community in how we respond, because this really is unprecedented. You think back to what SARS was like 17 years ago and what our ability technologically to respond to it, as to how Canada responded technologically to COVID-19. The kind of tech that we have now versus what was available 17 years ago is night and day. This kind of conversation we're having, we would not have been able to have 17 years ago. So there are lots of things that engineering has done over the past and continues to do, which would be hugely impactful. Just think of the telecom network. Think of all the communication advances that have happened. Smartphone devices, app development. Look at the work that Willy Wong in EC did around remote monitoring of pulse oximeters to help doing diagnostics of patients in hospitals. Being able to spin that up in literally 48 hours and deploy into a hospital is something that would not have been able to do 15 years ago, just given the huge advances that engineering have made in the IoT space. So it's exciting for sure. Steve. Steve Tower, you have a great question. If you open up for the new school year, how will campus life be different? Well, Steve, I'm gonna answer it by saying we will be open this fall. The university will be open this fall. The university is actually physically open right now. We just aren't on campus. So yeah, it's going to be different. Frankly, the main differences are, we're, to set scale, University of Toronto is 90,000 students. We're the size of a small city. And so the ability to bring that kind of concentration of people together, a mere 4 months from now is going to be, frankly, very difficult to do. Engineering is 1,200 new students, sorry, coming in September. So I've been working, and we just had a conversation with Gabe, the new NSOC school orientation chair, to talk about how they're going to plan orientation in a situation where you have to maintain physical distancing, or you may not, in fact, be able to bring in congregate in groups of more than 5 or 10 people at a time. So we're working with all those opportunities or options to figure out what we would do. We know that we'll be delivering courses. We suspect that we'll be likely delivering those courses in a remote fashion. And we are gonna work, and we've asked that our aim is to make sure that those courses, that delivery across all the years, whether first year to fourth year, graduate student, are the same quality, the same excitement, maybe even better than how we normally deliver courses, because we can deliver them in a different and more innovative way, in a more engaging way. So school will continue. All the opportunities, things will roll as they normally do. They'll be in a slightly different fashion. When I was talking to Gabe about orientation, they actually said, well, you know what? We could do a virtual, but maybe we run the physical part of orientation we do once we can come back together in the spring or in the summer, in the winter. So everybody's considering all the options, but it's going to still going to roll. We'll see how we do the die thing. That might be a little bit hard. to ship people purple dye to wherever they happen to be, or give them the recipe for cabbages and so on so they can self-tattoo. But we will continue all the normal things going forward. So stay tuned to how we roll that out. But open to ideas because we're not sure. Hannah asked a good question. What sources are we using to inform U of T engineering of our COVID plans? So we take guidance from the university. We take guidance from public health. We take guidance from the provincial government. Those are the trusted sources of information about what the policies are for the university, for the region. Many know that our current Vice President Research, Innovation, and Strategic Initiatives is Vivek Goel. He led the SARS effort in Toronto. He was seminal to the creation of Public Health Ontario, which emerged out of that SARS initiative. He's a public health expert, so he is the lead on the research side. So he is very well versed and very knowledgeable about managing pandemic responses in the public health sector. And so his main focus is really being like, we have to take this slowly because the worst thing you could have happen is that you open too quickly and then you have to shut again. And that creates all sorts of turmoil. So it's far better right now to be cautious, in particular for schools, than it is to be too aggressive and open and then realize that you've now created yet another problem. For what it's worth, one of the other engineering deans very early on, I think almost the first week that this started, we were all, and they said universities are the best place to study infections because we take random people from different places and we put them into congested rooms for an hour in mixed up seats and we allow them to intermix, and then we disperse them around campus where they do the same thing again throughout the day. So if you wanted to study epidemiology with a mixed population, universities are a great place to do it. So that's one of the reasons that universities are actually being quite cautious about opening back up. So it is a good question. Last question, because I know we're running a little bit late. A good one here. Yeah, so this is a good one from Andrea. Do we anticipate a drop in student enrollment, foreign students in particular, and how will this impact teaching and learning? So we don't know. We have model yields that we use for our normal classes and normal it offers. We do anticipate that there will be some challenges with foreign students. There's a number of reasons for this. The main ones are going to be the challenge of, frankly, foreign students, the ability for them to get visas and the travel restrictions. So we're asking students who are accepting our offers, and frankly, we're getting pretty much on track as if this wasn't happening right now for foreign students admitting or signing back their offer letters, accepting their admission offers, is that they need to start now to get their permits paperwork all in place. The main challenge there is that a lot of the obviously a lot of the consular services in different places are on reduced service, so the timelines are longer to get there. So that's one thing. The other is frankly, even within domestic students, same situation. Students may decide that they would rather go to a local, if they're not from Toronto, go to a local university versus coming to Toronto because they don't want to move or things like that. And those are the similar problems we have anyways. So we don't know how to model it. We're concerned about the drop in enrollment, but we are sending the message that U of T is open. This is an awesome place, as you all know, to do your engineering degree. And this is really just one semester of what will be 8, right? 1 year out of 4, or 5 if you do PEY, of what is an awesome, outstanding, top-ranked engineering education. And that's the message that we want to get out to our students, that we're here. We're going to be giving you an outstanding first-year experience. and that you'll be joining the terrific extended school community. That's the message we want you alumni to get out for us as well, that you had a lot of fun when you were in undergrad. But yeah, it's a concern, but we are fully engaged and keen on welcoming our foreign students coming in this year. So with that, I'm going to wrap up this coffee with Chris. And I am happy if people want to a virtual coffee, alumni coffee with Chris at any time. Feel free to reach out. I'm happy to do that. So I'm going to turn it back to Sonia to do a quick wrap up.
Thank you so much for all of that, Chris. That was tremendous insights on how we have been pivoting as a faculty. It's been great to kind of hear how we've all risen to the occasion. We truly appreciate you making the time to join us today. While we all may be acting responsibly and staying home during the COVID-19 crisis, know that the Alumni Office here at U of T Engineering is excited to still be able to provide you with engaging lectures, presentations, and discussions from our alumni and faculty during this period. Know that your alumni team is still here to ensure we create spaces to bring you, our engineering community, together. Our next alumni event is our May edition of the School Lunch and Learn, which is scheduled for Wednesday, May 13th, and will be hosted exclusively online once again. We hope you'll join us for a presentation by Joseph Orozco, who is the Executive Director of the Entrepreneurship Hatchery here at U of T Engineering. And this session is actually called The Development of the Entrepreneurial Human Capital. Like today, the event is free and open to all engineering alumni. We hope you'll be able to join us for these and more on alumni events in the coming weeks. Details on how to register will be sent out to everyone following today's event. And with that, on behalf of myself and all my colleagues in the Alumni and Advancement Office and across the faculty, thank you for joining us for Coffee with Chris. Whether you're near or far, we're so thankful you were able to join us today and wish you a safe and happy day.